of the interrelation of man and the universe, the individual and society, and of the values shared by all people. World perspectives represents the world community of ideas in a universe of discourse, emphasizing the principle of unity in mankind, of permanence within change. Recent developments in many fields of thought have opened unsuspected prospects for a deeper understanding of man's situation and for a proper appreciation of human values and human aspirations. These prospects, though the outcome of purely specialized studies in limited fields, require for their analysis and synthesis a new structure and frame in which they can be explored, enriched and advanced in all their aspects for the benefit of man and society. Such a structure and frame it is the endeavor of world perspectives to define, leading hopefully to a doctrine of man. A further purpose of this series is to attempt to overcome a principal ailment of humanity, namely, the effects of the atomization of knowledge produced by the overwhelming accretion of facts which science has created, to clarify and synthesize ideas through the depth fertilization of minds, to show from diverse and important points of view the correlation of ideas, facts and values which are in perpetual interplay, to demonstrate the character, kinship, logic and operation of the entire organism of reality while showing the persistent interrelationship of the processes of the human mind and in the interstices of knowledge, to reveal the inner synthesis and organic unity of life itself. It is the thesis of world perspectives that in spite of the 6 world perspectives difference and diversity of the disciplines represented, there exists a strong common agreement among its authors concerning the overwhelming need for counterbalancing the multitude of compelling scientific activities and investigations of objective phenomena from physics to metaphysics, history and biology, and to relate these to meaningful experience. To provide this balance, it is necessary to stimulate an awareness of the basic fact that ultimately the individual human personality must tie all the loose ends together into an organic whole, must relate himself, to mankind and society while deepening and enhancing his communion with the universe. To anchor this spirit and to impress it on the intellectual and spiritual life of humanity, on thinkers and doers alike, is indeed an enormous challenge and cannot be left entirely either to natural science on the one hand or to organized religion on the other. For we are confronted with the unbending necessity to discover a principle of differentiation yet relatedness lucid enough to justify and purify scientific, philosophic and all other knowledge while accepting their mutual interdependence. This is the crisis in consciousness made articulate through the crisis in science. This is the new awakening. This series is committed to the recognition that all great changes are preceded by a vigorous intellectual re-evaluation and reorganization.
Renaissance.
Our authors are aware that the sin of hubris may be avoided by showing that the creative process itself is not a free activity, if by free we mean arbitrary or unrelated to cosmic law.
Cosmic law.
For the creative process in the human mind, the development
glyphs.
Process in organic nature and the basic laws of the inorganic
symbols.
realm may be but varied expressions of a universal formative process.
The process is
Thus,
uniform.
World Perspectives hopes to show that although the present apocalyptic period is one of exceptional tensions, there is also an exceptional movement at work towards a compensating unity which cannot violate the ultimate moral power pervading the universe, that very power on which all human effort must at last depend.
The universe is one.
In this way, we may
know it.
come to understand that there exists an independence of spiritual and mental growth which, though
No
conditioned by
separation.
circumstances, is never determined by circumstances.
Zero separation
In
from
this way, the
everything.
great plethora of human knowledge may be correlated with an insight into the world perspective 7 nature of human nature
Worldview.
by being attuned to the wide and
Universal
deep range
view.
of human thought and human experience.
Thinking.
For what is lacking is not the knowledge of the structure of the universe, but a
Information.
consciousness of the qualitative uniqueness of human life.
The universal consciousness.
And finally, it is the thesis of this series that man is in the process of developing a new awareness which,
Process
in
of
spite of his
awareness.
apparent spiritual and moral captivity, can eventually lift the human race above and beyond the fear, ignorance, brutality and isolation which beset it today.
Nothing
It is to this
is
nascent
isolated.
consciousness, to this concept of man born out of a fresh vision of reality, that World Perspectives is dedicated.
Fresh vision.
New York, 1958. Ruth Nanda Anshin.
Oh,
Contents page World Perspectives. Pound what this series means. Introduction to an old and a new tradition. 32 to the history of quantum theory. 34 3 the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum theory. 46 4 quantum theory and the roots of atomic science. 58 5 the
Atomic
development of
science.
philosophical ideas since
singular quantums,
Descartes in
half
comparison
quantums.
with the new situation in quantum theory. 71 6 the relation of quantum theory to other parts of natural science. 85 7 the theory of relativity. 99 8 criticism and counter proposals to the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum theory. 114 9 quantum theory and the structure of matter. 129
Matter structure.
10 Language and reality in modern physics.
Surface
145 11 the role of modern physics in the present development
Deep
of human
matter.
thinking. 161
161.
Introduction by F. S. C. Northrop Sterling Froliser OL Philosophy and Law. The Law School, Yale
Northrop.
University. There is a general awareness that contemporary physics has brought about an important revision in man's conception of the universe and his relation to it. The suggestion has been made that this revision pierces to the basis of man's fate and freedom, affecting even his conception of his capacity to control
What
his own
is
destiny.
freedom?
In no portion of physics does this suggestion show itself more pointedly than in the principle of
Predetermined
indeterminacy of quantum mechanics.
Existence.
The author of this book is the discoverer of this principle. In fact, it usually bears his name.
Well,
Hence, no one is more
Heisenberg.
competent to pass judgment on what it means than he. In his previous book, The Physical Principles of the Quantum Theory, Heisenberg gave an exposition of the theoretical interpretation, experimental meaning and mathematical apparatus of quantum mechanics for professional physicists. Here he pursues this and other physical theories with respect to their philosophical implications and some of their likely social consequences for the layman.
Social.
More specifically, he attempts here to raise and suggest answers to 3 questions. What do the experimentally verified theories of contemporary physics affirm?
What do they
2. How do
affirm?
they permit or require man to think of himself in
How should
relation
I
to
think?
his universe? 3. How
What
is
is my
this new way of
relationship
thinking, which is
to
the
my
creation
thoughts?
of the modern West, going to affect other parts of the world?
World
The third of these
relationships.
questions is dealt with briefly by Heisenberg at the beginning and end of this inquiry. The brevity of his remarks should not lead the reader to pass lightly over their import.
Nope.
As he
Nope.
notes, whether we like it or not, modern ways are going to alter and in part destroy traditional customs and values.
Customs.
University of Chicago Press, Chicago, 1930.
1930.
It is frequently assumed by native leaders of non-Western societies, and also often by their Western advisors, that the problem of introducing modern scientific instruments and ways into Asia, the Middle East and Africa is merely that of giving the native people their political independence and then providing them with the funds and the practical instruments.
No.
This facile assumption overlooks several things. First, the instruments of modern science derive from its theory and require a comprehension of that theory for their correct manufacture or effective use.
Effective use.
Second, this theory in turn rests on philosophical, as well as physical, assumptions. When comprehended, these philosophical assumptions generate a personal and social mentality and behavior quite different from, and at points incompatible with, the family, caste and tribally centered mentality and values of the native Asian, Middle Eastern or African people.
Family values.
In short, one cannot bring in the instruments of modern physics without sooner or later introducing its philosophical mentality, and this mentality, as it captures the scientifically trained youth, upsets the old familial and tribal moral loyalties. If unnecessary emotional conflict and social demoralization are not to result, it is important that the youth understand what